All right, we are live. Hi guys. I wanted to jump in here today and just have a little bit of a little bit of a rant, to be honest, because I've just had a conversation with someone, and this is not the first time I've had this about gastric bypass surgery, and it's only been a voice message so far, chat. But it inspired me enough to go, I'm going to make this video because this particular girl reached out to me, or woman, sorry, I should say, reached out to me wanting to know about gastric sleeve surgery. Is this a good idea? She feels like it's the only option. It's been recommended to her from her GP. What do I think about it? So I thought I'd make this video in light of that. And, you know, that being said, I don't know everything about this particular woman. I know enough, but when someone says to me, oh, it's my only option, my alarm bells, my red flags go off, my spider senses go, because if someone is being told that and not even being particularly overweight, it doesn't matter as far as I'm concerned, even if they're extremely obese, it doesn't address the underlying issue. Now, I have worked with people who have had gastric bypass surgeries before, and I can tell you it is fucking horrible. Like, it is awful. It is not something you want to do. And the reason I say that is because the deficiencies, the pain, the adjusting to it, it's not a simple surgery. It's not just like, oh, we'll make your stomach smaller. It's like, make your stomach smaller and then you can't fucking eat anything. Then you become nutrient deficient in everything, which you probably were already deficient in everything before. And the problem is when this is, I'm like looking at what's the underlying driver. And so this is a conversation around, ultimately around weight. And I thought, let's just jump in here and talk about that issue first. And what does it mean when, if this option is being presented to us, and my viewpoint on it. Now, having experienced seeing people go through this and how excruciating and how painful it is, I just don't think it's the solution at all, because a lot of the time when people go to mainstream medical, they don't look at optimal health. They're not looking at the underlying drivers of weight, and weight is not the issue. It's all the other stuff that is telling us, and weight is just a symptom that the body is out of balance. That is it. And so when we hold on to weight, a lot of the time, I would say a huge proportion of the time, is our body is so deficient and so starving that because it's not getting the right nutrition in, so it's starving of nutrients, and it's also usually in a stressed state, that it is acting from that place that it is in fight or flight. It's like a famine or a drought or a war or something, and our primal brain switches on and we go into survival mode. And so if that is happening, we go, okay, well, of course the body is not in balance, right? So how do we actually get the body into balance, and how do we view it, right? And we've got to start looking at what the underlying drivers are of weight gain. And if it is rapid weight gain, what's really happening? I'm just going to share my screen with you. Share my screen? No, I'm going to do a whiteboard. Because if this is happening, we want to go, okay, why is this happening? And let's get really honest about this. So this is something I share with people when I first start working with them, and this is what I call the eco. Oh, where's it gone? It's gone. Walk about here. No, it's not there. Oh, great. Okay, we'll try again. Take two. Share whiteboard. Yeah, this is something that I when I'm looking at people and when I'm working with people, it's like I want to start going, okay, what are the things that we're looking at? And when we're looking at weight, we've got our signs and symptoms, and we want to look at our health and what it takes to be in balance from three aspects. So we've got the biochemical, the emotional, and the physical. If you joined this group, there is a video on this in the welcome video, and I talk about this, right? So you may have seen this before. But when we're looking at weight specifically, that's not even a word, we want to go, okay, what are the underlying drivers of the weight? And so weight for me is the symptom, it's a symptom. So we've got our signs and symptoms here, right? And we want to know, okay, well, we've got the physical aspect. What are the things that actually impact weight? So we've got to look at the physical. So what's the physical environment? What's our 3D reality? What are our signs and symptoms of the whole body, not just the fact that there's weight? We will want to look at things like digestion, inflammation, all the signs and symptoms that our body is telling us, because our body speaks in symptoms, in whispers. Then we've got to look at the biochemistry, and then we also have to look at the emotional aspects. Now, when we're talking about weight, there's a few things I want you to understand, okay? So we're going to go over here, and we're just going to start to write down. Number one, the biggest driver is inflammation, right? And so when there is weight, there is always inflammation. And I want to go, okay, well, where is that coming from? And so number one is the gut. And so if we have issues with weight, the gut is not working. And so we're not absorbing our nutrients. So this goes down to absorption, right? Now, the thing that is really important to know about this is that we have stomach acid in our stomach, and we actually need really, here's our stomach, and there's our stomach that they want to bypass. And this actually should be a pH of about 2, right? But a lot of the time, what happens over time, we have stress and environmental things happen to us, and we have lack of nutrients. This pH actually rises, which means that we're actually not producing enough stomach acid. And then as a knock-on effect, when our food goes into our small intestine, we actually don't absorb. So this is actually called malabsorption, right? Right now, when malabsorption happens, malabsorption happens, we get more hungry. That's number one. So we need this gut to be working well, right? We also need to have in our large intestine, so our small intestine goes like that. We've got a little like this, goes around like that. I did have a diagram, but I don't know where it is. It's gone now, and I'm on Zoom, and our large intestine goes like this. And we've got also this little like ecosystem that lives in our gut, right? And so this lives here. And the balance of this microbiome is directly also related to, can impact weight gain and inflammation and obesity. And this is like a little ecosystem, and everything works in harmony, right? So we need this to be working well for us to absorb our nutrients. There's particular types of imbalances of bacteria in our gut that can actually cause us to be more susceptible to obesity, right? So we need this to be working. So first of all, you've got to be actually absorbing your nutrients to get the nutrition in. If you don't get the nutrition in, you then, for example, even to make stomach acid, you need like zinc. You also need potassium and sodium, because it's hydrochloric acid. So HCl is a part of stomach acid. We need sodium chloride, which is chloride. We also need potassium and zinc to actually make adequate levels of stomach acid. So which comes first, the chicken or the egg? All right. So if you're not eating the right diet, then your stomach acid becomes low, and then you actually start to not absorb. Now, what happens as a result is then we also get inflammation. And so in the gut, we actually need this to be working well for there to not be inflammation. The other part to this is often we have a condition that's called leaky gut. And what that is we have these bricks, and I call them bricks, but that's the inside of the small intestine. And what happens is we actually have these that should be really tight, and they're designed to, like, we eat our food and it gets broken down, to let the food go down here, which will go into the bloodstream. So through here, because this is like the little gateway, and then it goes to the cell for energy. And in the cell, if we have the cell here, we have this little powerhouse in here that makes energy, right? And it burns energy and it uses energy. And we need to get the fuel into the cell. Now, what's the fuel? The fuel is our macros. So our fats, our carbs, and our proteins. But we also need minerals to get that into the body. Minerals and vitamins, right? Which is our micros. Sorry, this is really messy, but you get the gist, right? So we need that to get the energy into the cell. And so when we don't get that into the cell, we can't make energy. We get exhausted and we get hungry, right? That's number one. But what happens is that this, as we're not getting the nutrition in, the cells in the small intestine also become compromised and they start to become a bit leaky. So say they're like not as healthy as what they should be. They become a bit leaky. And over time, what happens is they actually start letting things through that they shouldn't normally let through because their junctions aren't as tight. And so we eat our food, let's make food green, although it's probably not green, it's probably more like white food. Anyway, it's going into here and it's going into the bloodstream, and our immune system sees it and it spikes an attack. That should be in red, right? And so this is how we actually get, well, oh God, moving this thing over is just not working for me. I need to improve my skills. This is how we get inflammation. What's going on? It's moving. Stop. Inflammation. This is a new tool of mine, so I'm still learning. I've still got my L plates on. Right? So inflammation. And this is how inflammation happens. The other way that inflammation happens in the body is with unregulated blood sugar. And so if our blood is going, we don't want that color. If our blood is going up and down, blood sugar, the body will not want this to happen. And as soon as unregulated blood sugar happens, the body and it can't use it and it can't get the energy into the cell. We need insulin to actually get the glucose into the cell. What happens is we actually become insulin resistant, because over time, as we have high blood sugar, the body will release insulin. Insulin is a hormone to actually get glucose into the cell. So insulin will bind to the receptor, and then glucose is allowed into the cell. And remember how there's a little mitochondria into the cell? We need that to actually go into the cell to make energy. The energy format is called ATP, right? And so we need this to make energy. So what happens over time when there is this constant rise and fall, the body will not like blood sugars to be raised. It does not like it. It wants it to be in a healthy range, right? So it will go, shit, we need to increase that insulin. But what happens is, where over time, as this has been happening for a long time, we become insulin resistant. There's heaps of insulin. It's a little bit like these receptors become deaf. So imagine everyone's knocking at the door. There's a party inside the house and we can't hear what's going on inside the house. Or the people inside, can't hear what the people knocking at the door, they can't get in. So what happens then is the body will go, I'm going to store this as fat because we can't use this energy right now. So we're going to get rid of it, right? This is not just about energy in, energy out. It's actually about utilizing the energy and the efficiency of this mitochondria, right? And how efficient our body is actually utilizing the fuel. And if it doesn't utilize it, it will store it as fat. So that's number two. If we have high levels of blood sugars going on, we will also, this is inflammation. And the body will do everything it can to protect itself because it does not want to cause damage to those to the inside of our arteries, inside to the cells, to the damage of the cells, and it will do everything to protect it, right? This is what we also call oxidative stress, right? Which is also like a combination of other things. This will also cause inflammation. So the immune system is reacting to a response to the high elevated sugar levels in your blood, right? And so we want our blood sugar levels to be more of a stable level, right? But the problem is, if we're not absorbing our food, we go back up to here. We don't make enough stomach acid. We're not eating the right foods. We're low in different vitamins and minerals. It makes it very hard to even reduce that insulin resistance level. And you can totally do it through diet. But the baseline is the foundations of our vitamins and minerals, and this needs to be addressed. The way that I do this, I actually now look at, I do blood work, but in pathology, but I also look at hair tissue. And this is where it's like looking at not just the vitamins and minerals, things you can't actually test in the blood, you can test in the hair tissue, but the ratio of your minerals and how that impacts everything else that functions in the body and optimal levels, right? This is really, 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 really important. And so if you're holding on to weight, it's because there's a lot of minerals that are deficient in your body and you're not getting them in, right? Now, the third thing that's happening with inflammation is our friend stress. And so we're going to call that number 3, which is cortisol, right? Now, people who have high levels of cortisol will often hold on to belly fat. So that tire around the middle is often belly fat. And so if we're struggling to lose weight, we want to look at why that middle tire aspect is often what we call cortisol. And when we want to go, okay, well, how are we looking at that? So when we go back to looking at ourselves with this relationship with food, our ability to actually get the fuel into the cells, but there's this double-pronged approach where we're also looking at the emotional aspect of what's happening with us. Why is my thing gone? Where's it gone? Oh, here we go. What's happening with us in terms of in the emotional aspect. And so we want to look at it and go, okay, well, how are we feeling safe in our own bodies, or are we in alarm? Okay, and when we're in alarm, we make high levels of cortisol. I'm going to change the color so it's like reflects what we're talking about. We're in alarm. And so when we're in alarm, which is basically called fight or flight, right? We make high levels of cortisol, and cortisol is our stress hormone. And when cortisol is at high levels, it will prioritize making a lot of other hormones over that. And cortisol is also quite inflammatory. It also degrades the lining of the gut. It changes the structure, the functioning of our immune system. And so when we're making huge levels of cortisol, our other hormones impact. And one of the things that it will impact is also the thyroid, right? So we've talked about inflammation from the gut, inflammation from blood sugar, and inflammation from stress. And when we're talking about stress, a lot of this comes down to our traumas and the way that we're operating in the world. And are we in full alarm? And if we are in alarm, our body wants to hold on to things because it wants to survive, right? So when we're surviving, our brain is operating from this factor of, yeah, I just need to keep you alive. And I will hang on to all the nutrients because it appears that there's a famine going on or there's something going on. I'm going to hold on to all the fat I can. And we're just going to keep this here because we might need it, because we may need to use it for fuel later. And that is how our body is programmed. When we have excessive carbohydrates, we're actually designed to put fat on because we're used to having periods of time, from a 100 years ago, like farming methods, industrial revolution, like we had periods of time where we had more food, where there's more carbohydrate available, and we would naturally have times where we would eat more carbohydrate and put on more fat because that will get us through winter. And so the other aspect to this is we've got to look at the thyroid. And so the thyroid is the foot on the accelerator, and the adrenals or our nervous system puts the brake on. And so what happens when you've got your foot on the accelerator and the foot on the brake at the same time is you start to burn rubber and you don't get anywhere. And you're making a lot of steam and a lot of noise, but you're not actually getting anywhere. And so here's the problem that happens with the thyroid. And this is the bit about the surgery that really just gets up my goat, is they don't even look at optimal ranges. So this is optimal versus just the ranges. And so when I look at that, a lot of the time they won't even test the full thyroid. So you can't even tell if the thyroid hormone is getting into the cell. And so they will test things like, they'll test maybe TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone. It's not even made by the thyroid. And if it's within the range, which is between 0.5 and 5, they're like, you're fine. Optimal ranges is between 1 and 2 or 0.5 and 1.5, depending on what reference you go off. So, right, but you can see the range is a lot smaller. As soon as this goes up, this tells me that there's something not happening. And so we want to also look at free T4, free T3, reverse T3, and antibodies. All right. Now, what has blown my mind is I have seen people go and get back gastric bypass surgery, not even had full thyroid check, and then they'll have something such as Hashimoto's thyroiditis, which is one of the biggest causes of hypothyroidism, meaning your thyroid's slow. And I'm like, your thyroid is not operating properly. You're really nutrient deficient. Why have you had this why has there been this surgery when we haven't addressed the underlying issues? Now, on top of that, we're not even talking about even like these underlying issues that we're talking about in terms of why we feel like we need to get this. Our relationship with food, our relationship with self. And I don't, like this thing that we think is going to fix us when it actually doesn't address the underlying problem. And a lot of the time there is always, we go back to the trauma aspect. Like this is also to do with our relationship with ourselves. Now, our relationship with food and our bodies is a reflection of this internal dialogue that we have with ourselves. And a lot of the time, there is also a reason in context of trauma why we actually may hold on to weight. And this comes back to our own internal belief systems about ourselves and the payoff that there is if we do hold on to weight. Now, if you have gained weight quickly, that is an indicator that something has changed and that there is something that has changed and may have been like pushed over the edge. And then there is this repercussion effect. Going and doing some sort of surgery, unless you actually get to the bottom of what that is not going to address the underlying problem. I actually was speaking to someone the other day and they said, yeah, my sister got gastric bypass surgery. It lasted a year and then she put all the weight on again because she didn't actually address the underlying issue. There was a lot of trauma there, right? So can you see how interconnected this is with ourselves? And what I've also experienced is this feeling of inadequacy, this feeling of an unworthiness that comes with this wanting to, like, looking at what are the underlying beliefs about myself. If I feel like this is my only option, what am I making it mean about me? And what am I making it mean about me? And what am I trying, whose approval am I trying to get if I'm so desperate to do this? And here's what I want to tell you, and this is what I know to be true. Fast is slow and slow is fast with everything. And I wish I had learned this, and really someone had said this to me when I was like 19. Fast is slow and slow is fast. And anytime I've looked at anything, I've tried to do it in my life and by shortcut, bypass. And then I look back and I'm like, if I had just like stuck to the thing and like slogged away, I would have been there by now, instead of trying to like bypass, get there quick, and what am I trying to approve as a result, and avoid the pain and avoid the discomfort. And it was also to do with our relationship with pain and discomfort that we have. And so when we're looking at this relationship with food and this relationship with ourselves, you can go and get the surgery, but it is not going to change the way that you view yourself. And it is going to make your life way worse. And so even though it feels like it's a quick fix, the cost of that further down the road is that you're actually going to be more depleted and more deficient and still not address the underlying issue. And if we actually take the time, like remove the race and remove the urgency, and a lot of the time when I see people and I have conversations with them, if they just went, you know what, the most economical time for me to actually invest in myself, in my health, and like start the slow journey is now. 2 years later, we're still having the same conversation and nothing's changed, because they haven't got the right guidance, they haven't got the right help, they don't understand, and it's not their fault. But we've got to shift from that perspective of looking for the quick fix, looking for that as a result of desperation. And this is where it's really important to get good guidance and actually be willing to fully show up and get honest with yourself, also with this level of work that you're willing to do. And it's not easy, but I can tell you what, the side effects of going down the other route is also not easy. So it really saddens me. It makes me really mad when I hear this, because I'm just like, there could be underlying thyroid issues. The thyroid's not operating properly. Well, if the thyroid's not operating properly, you're going to put weight on. Like, why are we doing a surgery which is then going to cause more stress to the thyroid? Why are we doing surgery that's not actually going to address the underlying issues to inflammation? Actually could make it worse. Why are we doing surgery when we're not addressing like what's happening with the gut? And it's just like, it's like going to the mechanic and going, I'm just going to stick some, let's just put some gaffer tape on the leak in the car, rather than, doing whatever needs to be done to really fix it. Yeah, it takes longer. You got to pull everything out, but at the end of the day, then your car's fixed. And we will spend more money on things like that than we will invest in our own vehicle to actually create the foundations for good, solid health. And this comes back to our own beliefs in ourselves and the way that we view ourselves. And it's so frustrating to see a system that's like, can we have a conversation around stress? Can we have a conversation about minerals and deficiencies? Can we actually start looking at the thyroid and what's happening really with the thyroid? And is the thyroid really working properly before we go down this route? And I would say, my comment is, I reckon it would probably like 95% of those surgeries are unnecessary. I'm just guessing, but when does any doctor have that conversation with you? And so it makes me mad. It makes me really fucking mad, actually. So if you've got any questions about that, please reach out to me. I hope that made sense with what I just spoke about, but it's just really looking at it and looking at the body. And when I see people who can't shift weight, I'm like, your body is starving and you are exhausted. No wonder you can't shift the weight. And it sometimes can be, it's putting the bits of the puzzle together, and I get it. It can be really frustrating, but it just saddens me that this is where we're at in our world, where this is the solution when it's not the solution. You just got to go and look at the supermarket and the food that's in the supermarket to see that, this is the problem. 95% of Australians don't eat enough, the average amount of the recommended amount of 2 servings of fruit and 5 servings of vegetables a day. 95%. And then we wonder why we're like doing surgeries and having these chronic lifestyle diseases. So, oh man, far out. Sometimes I hear stuff like this and I'm just like, okay, where are we heading with the world? That is all. I hope you guys have a beautiful afternoon. Let me know if you've got any questions, and I'll chat to you soon. Bye.